The shuttle doors hissed open, and the atmosphere of Ilkora Prime, home to the Intergalactic Academy of Combat Sciences, hit Lieutenant Marcus Kane like a wave. It wasn't the gravity, Earth's training simulations had prepared him for that, but the sheer weight of expectation. Thousands of alien cadets from across the galaxy were gathered in the courtyard, their eyes narrowing as Marcus stepped off the ship, his plain, Earth-standard combat suit gleaming under the alien sun. "Is that the human?" someone whispered, their voice laced with disbelief. Marcus didn't look up. Instead, he walked with purpose, his boots echoing on the polished obsidian tiles. Every step felt like crossing a battlefield, with eyes from every corner of the galaxy fixed on him. He could hear snickers, feel the mocking stares. To them, he was a novelty, a primitive species punching far above its weight. Earth's first and only representative, the voice of the Academy's commandant, a towering insectoid with crystalline eyes, boomed across the courtyard. "Let us welcome Lieutenant Marcus Kane to the Academy." The cadets didn't cheer. A few scoffed openly, while others exchanged amused glances. One alien, a hulking brute with scaled skin and glowing amber eyes, barked a laugh. "We're supposed to train with that? My hatchlings could outfight a human." Marcus stopped in the middle of the courtyard and slowly raised his head. His piercing blue eyes met the brute's gaze. "I guess we'll find out." The challenge hung in the air like a live grenade. The crowd murmured, and the brute, who Marcus later learned was named Braktar, grinned, showing jagged teeth. "Careful, human," Braktar growled, stepping forward. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You don't want to get hurt on your first day." "Why wait?" Marcus replied, his tone even. The crowd erupted in astonished chatter. A duel on the first day? It was unheard of, especially for a species so new to the galactic stage. Marcus's calm demeanor only added fuel to the fire. The commandant's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Cadet Braktar, Lieutenant Kane, this academy does not permit unsanctioned combat." "Then sanction it," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the noise. A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. Even the commandant hesitated, his crystalline eyes narrowing. "You're certain, Lieutenant? Braktar is one of our top cadets." Marcus nodded. "I'm certain." Braktar roared with laughter. "You've got guts, human. I'll give you that. But guts won't save you." The commandant sighed, clearly unimpressed. "Very well. The duel will take place in the arena at dawn tomorrow." Dismissed. As the crowd dispersed, whispers followed Marcus like a shadow. Some mocked his arrogance, others questioned his sanity. But Marcus walked away without a word, his expression unreadable. Later that night, in the dim solitude of his quarters, Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, running through the scenarios in his mind. His Earth-standard equipment, mocked as outdated, was laid out before him. To everyone else, it was just basic gear. To Marcus, it was all he needed. He smiled faintly. The Academy thought this was about proving humanity's worth. For Marcus, it was simpler than that. He had been trained to survive against impossible odds. Braktar was just another opponent. And tomorrow, the galaxy would learn exactly what humans were capable of. The duel arena buzzed with an electric anticipation as Marcus Kane stepped into the circular combat zone. Towering crystalline walls surrounded him, glowing faintly with energy, amplifying the tension in the air. Thousands of cadets filled the stands, their faces a kaleidoscope of alien features, each twisted into expressions of disdain, amusement, or mild curiosity. At the opposite end of the arena, Braktar entered to a thunderous cheer. The hulking reptilian warrior basked in the crowd's adulation, flexing his massive arms and igniting the energy gauntlets that crackled ominously around his claws. "Look at him," a cadet sneered from the stands. "No armor enhancements, no tech. Is this a duel or a public execution?" Marcus ignored the jeers. His Earth-standard combat suit was unremarkable compared to the dazzling displays of alien technology around him, but it wasn't his gear they should fear. He calmly adjusted his tactical gloves, his fingers brushing the hidden compartments holding his custom modifications. The commandant's voice echoed across the arena. "This duel is sanctioned under the Academy's rules of engagement. Combatants, prepare yourselves. The match will end upon incapacitation or surrender." Begin. Braktar didn't waste a second. With a deafening roar, he charged like a battering ram, his energy gauntlets sparking with lethal intent. The crowd erupted in cheers, confident the human would be flattened in moments. Marcus moved. Not backward, as Braktar clearly expected, but sideways. His sidestep was precise, measured, just enough to let the alien's attack graze harmlessly past. Braktar stumbled slightly, thrown off balance by the unexpected evasion. Marcus struck. A swift, calculated jab to a nerve cluster under Braktar's ribs sent a ripple of pain through the alien's torso. It wasn't enough to injure him, but it was enough to annoy him. The crowd fell silent for a moment. Then came the laughter. A tap? Is that what passes for combat on Earth? Braktar growled, his amber eyes blazing with anger. You'll regret that, human. He lunged again, this time with calculated ferocity. His strikes were faster, his movements more deliberate, forcing Marcus to give ground. But while Braktar relied on raw strength and advanced tech, Marcus relied on something alien to most cadets, adaptability. The duel became a dance. Marcus moved with precision, his footwork keeping him just out of reach. Every step had a purpose, every dodge, every block, every seemingly minor action fed into a larger strategy. Braktar's attacks grew more aggressive, more erratic. Stand still and fight. Braktar bellowed, swinging wildly. Marcus smirked. Why would I do that? It was then that Braktar made his fatal mistake. Overextended and blinded by frustration, he left his side unprotected. Marcus struck like lightning, a brutal combination of strikes targeting weak points in the alien's anatomy. Braktar staggered, his massive frame trembling as his energy gauntlets fizzled out. Marcus seized the moment, locking his opponent's arm in a joint-breaking hold. The crowd gasped as Braktar, roaring in pain, dropped to his knees. Yield, Marcus commanded, his voice calm but unyielding. For a moment, Braktar hesitated, his pride warring with the pain coursing through his body. Then, with a guttural snarl, he slammed his fist against the ground in surrender. The arena fell into stunned silence. As Marcus released his hold and stepped back, the commandant's voice broke the quiet. The winner, Lieutenant Marcus Kane of Earth. Marcus looked up at the crowd, his expression calm, almost bored. But his words were anything but. Next time, he said, try taking me seriously. The silence broke into a cacophony of disbelief and hushed murmurs. Marcus walked off the field, leaving behind a stunned academy that had just received its first lesson in human resilience. The whispers began before Marcus Kane had even left the arena. By the next morning, they had spread like wildfire. Cadets filled the halls of the Intergalactic Academy of Combat Sciences with disbelief, derision, and something Marcus recognized as fear. Braktar must have gone easy on him, one cadet muttered in the mess hall. It's a fluke, another insisted. Humans can't possibly be that capable. Marcus ignored the chatter as he moved through the sprawling campus. The Academy's halls were a blend of ancient architecture and cutting-edge technology, designed to inspire awe and respect. To Marcus, they only served as a reminder that he was a stranger here. Instructors gave him polite but cold nods. Cadets avoided his gaze, though their scornful whispers followed him wherever he went. He welcomed it. Attention, even negative, was leverage. The first official class was Battle Tactics and Application, held in a holographic lecture hall where the instructor, a towering, four-armed Glaxian named Commander Drell, paced with military precision. Today, Drell began, his voice sharp as a blade, we will analyze strategic failures during the Battle of Tarnus 6. He gestured, and a three-dimensional battle simulation erupted in the air, a clash between two advanced alien fleets. The other cadets leaned forward, their gazes fixed on the dazzling display of ships exchanging energy blasts. Marcus watched silently, his eyes tracing the subtle details of the battlefield. Commander, Marcus said, raising his hand, why didn't the defending fleet deploy their interceptors earlier? The room fell silent. The other cadets turned to glare at him. Interrupting an instructor was practically sacrilege. Drell's four eyes narrowed. Explain. Marcus stood, his calm demeanor unshaken by the glares. The defending fleet had superior numbers and smaller, faster craft. Had they launched interceptors at the beginning, they could have disrupted the attackers' flanking maneuvers. Instead, they waited too long and were outmaneuvered. The hologram shifted as Drell adjusted the simulation, following Marcus's suggestion. The new outcome was striking, an overwhelming victory for the defenders. The room erupted in murmurs. Drell regarded Marcus with a mix of curiosity and begrudging respect. "Interesting, Lieutenant Kane. Your analysis is unorthodox, but effective." As the lesson continued, Marcus noticed one cadet studying him intently. She had a lithe, almost feline form, with iridescent scales that shimmered faintly under the lights. Celaya, a Zalari known for her sharp intellect, had been silent throughout the session, but her piercing golden eyes betrayed deep calculation. After class, she approached him in the corridor. "That was bold, human," she said, her tone neutral but her expression unreadable. "You've made enemies here." Marcus smirked. "If they're angry, it means I'm doing something right." Celaya tilted her head, her scales catching the light. "Perhaps. But you'll need more than clever words to survive here. The Academy doesn't just test your tactics, it tests your endurance." "Good," Marcus said. "Endurance is my specialty." The next day brought the first team combat exercise. Marcus was assigned to a squad of reluctant cadets who barely acknowledged his presence. The simulation pitted them against a swarm of AI-controlled drones in a dense jungle environment. From the moment the exercise began, it was chaos. The cadets bickered, their over-reliance on advanced technology leaving them exposed to the drones' relentless attacks. "Form a defensive perimeter." Marcus barked, his voice cutting through the noise. The squad hesitated, but Marcus's authority was impossible to ignore. He coordinated their efforts, using the terrain and their strengths to counter the drones. By the end, they had barely scraped a victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. As the simulation ended, Celaya approached Marcus again. "You shouldn't have won that," she said, her tone laced with curiosity. Marcus shrugged. "They didn't think I could win yesterday either." For the first time, Celaya smiled. "Maybe there's more to humans than I thought." But as Marcus walked away, he knew the Academy's skepticism hadn't disappeared, it had simply shifted. He wasn't just the human cadet anymore. He was the human threat. The encrypted message blinked on Marcus Kane's console, casting a faint glow across his dimly lit quarters. Its arrival was unexpected. Earth had warned him to expect radio silence during his time at the Academy, but the signature code embedded in the transmission was unmistakably human. Marcus leaned forward, tapping the interface. The screen filled with the Earth Defense Coalition's emblem before dissolving into a series of schematics, tactical overviews, and a single message. "They underestimate you. Let them. The trials will test more than skill, teach them how we win wars." Marcus leaned back in his chair, the faintest smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He'd been trained to operate with limited resources, adapt to hostile environments, and outthink enemies who believed themselves superior. Earth had built its combat philosophy on a foundation of improvisation and unpredictability. If the Academy wanted to test him, they'd get far more than they bargained for. The next morning, Marcus joined the cadets in the Academy's central courtyard. It was time for the announcement of the class trial, an event spoken of in hushed, reverent tones. The commandant stood on an elevated platform, his crystalline eyes scanning the crowd. "Cadets," he began, his voice echoing across the expanse, "the class trial is your opportunity to demonstrate everything you've learned. It will test your strength, strategy, and resolve. Failure is not an option." A holographic map materialized above the platform, showing a vast, simulated battlefield filled with dense forests, treacherous mountains, and abandoned urban zones. "The objective is simple," the commandant continued. "Dominate the battlefield. Success requires unity, adaptability, and precision. Your opponents will be your classmates." And for one cadet, his gaze locked onto Marcus. "The challenge will be unique." The murmur that rippled through the crowd was palpable. Marcus kept his expression neutral, but he could feel the weight of their stares. "You will face the entire class," the commandant declared, his voice cold and final. The courtyard erupted in disbelief. Even the most confident cadets exchanged uneasy glances. Marcus, however, remained unshaken. He'd expected nothing less. Later that evening, Marcus returned to his quarters to prepare. He spent hours reviewing the schematics Earth had sent, overlaying them with the Academy's known training methodologies. The key wasn't to outmatch his opponents in strength, that was impossible. Instead, he'd exploit their weaknesses, reliance on technology, lack of coordination under pressure, and an overconfidence that blinded them to nuance. By midnight, there was a knock at his door. Marcus opened it to find Celia standing there, her golden eyes sharp with curiosity. "They're going to crush you," she said bluntly. "Probably," Marcus replied, stepping aside to let her in. Celia steadied the tactical map spread across his desk. "So why do you look like you're enjoying this?" Marcus glanced at her, his calm demeanor unwavering. "Because they think this is a fight." Celia frowned. "Isn't it?" "No," Marcus said, his tone steady. "It's a lesson. And I'm the teacher." Intrigued, Celia leaned closer. "You have a plan, don't you?" "Something like that," Marcus admitted. "But I could use a few curious minds to help me refine it." Celia's scales glimmered faintly as she smiled. "Curious minds, or desperate ones? Does it matter?" Marcus countered. By dawn, Celia and a handful of other cadets were in Marcus's quarters, studying Earth's unconventional tactics. To them, it was alien, improvised traps, deceptive maneuvers, and psychological warfare designed to exploit overconfidence. As the class trial loomed, Marcus knew he wasn't just preparing for survival. He was preparing to rewrite the Academy's understanding of war. The galaxy's finest were about to learn the oldest lesson in combat: the side that adapts, wins. The battlefield stretched endlessly in every direction, a holographic marvel that simulated forests, mountains, rivers, and urban decay with unsettling realism. The Academy's cadets stood at the edge of the simulation zone, their expressions a mix of anticipation and confidence. Marcus Kane stood alone on the opposite side, his gear looking painfully ordinary against the gleaming weaponry and advanced armor of the others. Above, the commandant's voice rang out, amplified across the terrain. "The class trial begins now. Remember, only one cadet will leave this exercise victorious. Good luck." The signal blared, and chaos erupted. The cadets splintered into squads, their movements swift and coordinated. Drones flitted through the air, relaying tactical data to the teams. Marcus crouched low, disappearing into the dense underbrush. He had no drones, no squad, and no reinforcements. But what he did have was an unshakable understanding of asymmetric warfare. "They'll come for me first," Marcus muttered, activating his wrist-mounted scanner. "Good. Saves me the trouble of finding them." The first squad, led by a Bragtar warrior bristling with plasma cannons, stormed the jungle terrain. They moved with confidence, their tech scanning for heat signatures and motion. But Marcus had anticipated this. He'd prepared decoys, small thermal emitters scattered throughout the jungle. "Target acquired," one of the cadets barked, pointing at a cluster of heat signatures. The squad opened fire, unleashing a torrent of plasma that lit up the trees. When the smoke cleared, they found nothing but smoldering decoys. "That's impossible," the Bragtar growled, frustration creeping into his voice. From above, Marcus struck. He had scaled a nearby tree and now dropped down silently, landing behind the group. Before they could react, he launched a flashbang into their midst. The blinding light and deafening sound disoriented them just long enough for Marcus to take out their leader with a precision strike to the neck. "Retreat," one of the remaining cadets yelled, dragging their incapacitated leader. Marcus didn't follow. He let them run, knowing the fear would spread faster than he ever could. Elsewhere on the battlefield, other squads encountered similar frustrations. Marcus had sabotaged bridges, laid traps in narrow passes, and used the environment to funnel his opponents into kill zones. His tactics were unconventional, unpredictable, and maddeningly effective. By midday, the cadets were no longer thinking like hunters. They were thinking like prey. "He's dismantling us," Celia said, crouched behind cover with a group of cadets who had sought her out for leadership. "He's forcing us to react instead of act." One of the cadets, a telepath named Zorak Lewin, growled. "Then we bait him out." No more chasing shadows. We make him come to us. Celaya hesitated but nodded. Agreed. Consolidate our forces and set a trap. He'll have no choice but to engage. What they didn't know was that Marcus was already 2 steps ahead. As the cadets gathered in an abandoned urban zone to lay their trap, Marcus infiltrated their perimeter, observing their movements and identifying their vulnerabilities. When their ambush sprang, Marcus wasn't caught. He was waiting. Explosions rocked the area as Marcus's pre-planted charges tore through their ranks, sowing confusion and chaos. He emerged from the smoke like a phantom, striking with surgical precision. Focus! Celaya shouted, rallying the survivors. But it was too late. Marcus had turned their trap into a battlefield of his choosing. One by one, the cadets fell, their superior technology rendered useless against his relentless ingenuity. By the end of the trial, only Celaya remained standing, her weapons depleted, her squad scattered. She dropped to her knees, panting. Yield, Marcus said calmly, his shadow falling over her. Celaya looked up at him, her golden eyes burning with a mix of frustration and respect. You planned all of this? Marcus nodded. War isn't about strength. It's about thinking 3 moves ahead. The simulation ended, the battlefield dissolving into light. The commandant's voice, cold and emotionless, echoed above the stunned silence of the crowd. The winner, Lieutenant Marcus Kane. Marcus stood alone in the now empty field, the galaxy's brightest cadets humbled. For the first time, he saw something new in their eyes, respect, tinged with fear. As he walked away, he knew the Academy had learned its lesson. But the galaxy? The galaxy was still woefully unprepared. The aftermath of the class trial was as silent as a graveyard. Marcus Kane stood in the Academy's main hall, surrounded by holographic projections of the battle he had orchestrated. The commandant loomed at the center of the room, his crystalline eyes scanning the faces of the cadets assembled before him. You have all witnessed the results, the commandant intoned, his voice sharp and unyielding. Lieutenant Marcus Kane of Earth has demonstrated not only tactical brilliance but a fundamental mastery of combat principles that many of you lack. The cadets shifted uneasily, their pride wounded by the implication. Braktar glowered silently, while others avoided Marcus's gaze entirely. Only Celaya stood calmly, her golden eyes locked on Marcus, her expression inscrutable. The commandant gestured toward the holograms, which replayed pivotal moments of the trial, decoy traps luring squads into ambushes, explosives dismantling fortified positions, and Marcus outmaneuvering his opponents with uncanny precision. What you saw as chaos, the commandant continued, was, in fact, calculated order. Earth's methods, primitive though they may appear, leverage adaptability, unpredictability, and the exploitation of overconfidence. These are traits many of you have yet to develop. The murmurs began again, low and bitter. Are you saying his tactics are superior to ours? Zorakloan snapped, his voice tinged with anger. I am saying, the commandant replied coldly, that his tactics are effective. And effectiveness is what determines survival on the battlefield. Marcus stepped forward, his calm demeanor commanding attention. You all rely too much on technology, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. You think superior weapons and armor guarantee victory, but you've forgotten the basics, improvisation, resilience, and exploiting your opponent's weaknesses. Celaya tilted her head, her iridescent scales catching the light. And what is Earth's greatest strength, Lieutenant? Marcus paused, meeting her gaze. We're survivors. Our history is filled with conflict, hardship, and adaptation. When the odds are against us, we don't fold, we find a way. That's why we won this trial, and that's why Earth is here now. The room fell silent. For a moment, it seemed the cadets were finally beginning to understand. The commandant, however, was not finished. This academy exists to train the galaxy's finest. If humanity's methods offer something we have overlooked, we would be fools to dismiss it. As of today, Earth's combat doctrine will be incorporated into the curriculum. The announcement sent a ripple of shock through the crowd. Marcus remained stoic, though he allowed himself a small nod. As the assembly dispersed, Celaya approached him. You've shaken the foundation of this academy, she said, her tone a mixture of admiration and caution. Good, Marcus replied. They needed it. But it's not over, she warned. You've made enemies here. Powerful ones. The Academy may adapt, but there are those who won't forget what you've done. I'm not here to make friends, Marcus said, his voice firm. I'm here to make sure Earth has a seat at the table. Celia regarded him for a moment before nodding. You've earned that seat, Marcus Kane. But the galaxy isn't ready for you. Not yet. Marcus smiled faintly, a rare flicker of emotion breaking through his stoic exterior. Then they'd better start preparing. As he walked away, the Academy's sprawling halls seemed different, less hostile, more watchful. Marcus knew he'd accomplished something greater than winning a trial. He'd planted the first seeds of doubt in the galaxy's arrogance and the first seeds of belief in humanity's potential. The Academy had learned a lesson that day, but the galaxy's real education was just beginning.